Picture this. An island of just 56,000 people, that's smaller than most every NFL arena, could decide whether your kids grow up in an America that leads the AI age or spends the next century begging Beijing and Brussels for permission slips. Last week, the European Union tried to slam the door on a flourishing American future. They threatened us. They floated kicking us out of NATO. They rushed a token force of European troops into the Arctic as if a few photo op soldiers were going to stare down the president of the United States. So Trump did what globalists never expected. He started a clock. Stick with me to the very end of this video because you and I are going to walk through how Europe overplayed its hand, how Trump turned tariffs into a ticking time bomb under the EU economy, and why Italy just broke ranks, and why Greenland has suddenly become ground zero in the fight for AI, the dollar, and Western survival. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your patron professor, celebrating yet another day in the Trumpian golden age that you made possible back in November of 2024. So if you want a front row seat on how you continue to change the world in ways you never even imagined, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. As all eyes are on Davos, Switzerland for Trump's earthquake of a speech to the World Economic Forum. See my first video today, by the way, for an analysis of that. Back in Brussels, the European Union, or what's left of it, tried to draw a red line. They have declared that Greenland is absolutely not for sale. It is unconditionally off limits to any U.S. acquisition, and any American move that they don't like could mean sanctions and even talk of pushing the United States out of NATO. They actually staged a mini deployment of European troops to Greenland. A handful of soldiers that was somehow meant to send a very strong message to President Trump. Don't you dare even think of taking Greenland. They were betting that Trump would care more about polite diplomacy than about hard power, that Trump would absorb the insults and just move on. He didn't. Instead, Trump reframed the entire fight around deadlines, not debates. He announced that starting February 1st, exports from key European countries, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, and the Netherlands, Finland, and even the UK, would face a 10% tariff, rising to 25% on June 1st and staying in place until a deal is reached for the United States to acquire Greenland. In other words, it is not a matter of if the United States will acquire Greenland, it is only a matter of when. And that clock will cost Europe hundreds of billions of dollars the more it continues to run. Europe's export-driven economies live and die on access to the United States consumer. Germany, France, and the Netherlands, they all rely heavily on selling into our market. When you put a date on higher tariffs, CEOs don't wait for Brussels to finish another summit. They pause contracts, they delay investments, they start calling ministers asking, how long is this going to last? And suddenly, Europe isn't defending a principle anymore. They're managing exposure. And that is where Italy steps in and has completely blown up the script. While some EU leaders beat their chests and talk about standing firm, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, one of the few leaders in Europe who still openly calls herself a Christian and a patriot, is openly refusing to send Italian troops to Greenland, and she's even mocking the tiny NATO presence there as a joke, which of course it is. And then she did something even more dangerous to the Brussels narrative. She actually offered to help broker an agreement with President Trump. In a statement carried on Italian media, Meloni admitted that the Arctic and Greenland are indeed genuinely strategic for the United States, that hostile actors must be kept out, and this should be handled through NATO coordination and dialogue, not symbolic deployments and escalations. She says she's spoken directly with President Trump and with the NATO Secretary General, pushing to cool things down and work together instead of stumbling into a crisis nobody is ready to fight. Translation, Italy just told the EU elites, stop LARPing as a superpower. You can't secure your own freaking borders, and now you want to try to provoke the one ally who actually is NATO. NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte appears to agree.
So statements from me will not add anything here. And when it comes to the Arctic, I think President Trump is right. Other leaders in NATO are right. We need to defend the Arctic. We know that the sea lanes are opening up. We know that China and Russia are increasingly active in the Arctic. There are 8 countries bordering on the Arctic. 7 are a member of NATO. That's Finland and Sweden and Norway and Denmark, Iceland, Canada and the US. And there's only one country bordering on the Arctic outside NATO, and that's Russia. And I would argue there is a 9th country, which is China, which is increasingly active in the Arctic region. So President Trump and other leaders are right. We have to do more there. We have to protect the Arctic against Russian and Chinese influence. And that's exactly what NATO ambassadors decided to do in September. We are working on that, making sure that collectively will we defend the Arctic region.
So now we're seeing a massive gap opening up between European rhetoric and European capability. Exactly the gap Trump is exploiting. So you got the hardliners like Emmanuel Macron and Mette Frederiksen basically saying that the United States moves on Greenland, it'll be the end of NATO. And then you've got the likes of Giorgia Meloni and Mark Rutte saying, look, there's no way we're defending and securing the Arctic region without the United States. And of course, Rutte is right. Over the last 30 years, the United States has spent nearly $20 trillion on defense. Let that hit you. $20 trillion, which accounts for 70% of NATO's defense spending. We spend more than 2 to 1 in relation to all other NATO nations combined. And then they have the gall to tell us that they're going to kick us out of NATO when we are NATO. Obviously, Giorgia Meloni and Mark Rutte are not having anything to do with that absurdity, because I think they recognize that the time has come for the United States to take over Arctic security. And I'm going to show you exactly why. For decades, our dietary guidelines told Americans the same tired old story. Low fat, low salt, eat less. Meanwhile, our food supply quietly filled up with seed oils, chemical additives, emulsifiers, and ultra-processed junk engineered to hijack your biology. Well, RFK Jr. released new dietary guidelines, and for the first time, the federal government is finally admitting the truth. Ultra-processed food is the real driver of chronic disease. These new guidelines mark a sharp turn toward food quality. They pull America back toward real traditional foods while warning against the processed products, because the damage that matters most actually starts in your gut. Your gut microbiome becomes imbalanced, inflammation takes hold, blood sugar control weakens, hormones drift off course, and the gut barrier slowly breaks down. For the first time, dietary guidelines are no longer ignoring the gut. They're explicitly recognizing kimchi as foundational to restoring the microbiome, supporting metabolic control, and strengthening immune function. Kimchi isn't just a fad, it's a centuries-old fermented food loaded with unique probiotic strains that strengthen the gut lining, regulate inflammation, and help the body detox from modern exposures. And RFK isn't just talking about this, he's living it.
Mainly meat and then fermented vegetables, anything fermented. So a lot of kimchi and all kinds of fermented vegetables. And it's really, I would say it's dramatically changed my, everything.
He eats like someone who understands that your gut controls your entire system, from weight regulation to immunity to brain function. The problem is that most people don't eat kimchi every single day. That's why Brightcore created Kimchi One. Kimchi One delivers the powerful benefits of kimchi in a single, simple, daily capsule, helping restore what modern food destroys. It supports your gut barrier, helps flush toxins, calms inflammation, and even reduces risk of obesity. In a world built on fake food, Give your gut real protection. Today, you can get an exclusive offer by clicking on the link below for 25% off your entire order, or for the best deal available, call my friends at Brightcore for up to 50% off plus free shipping. Call them now at 888-597-0233. I take this every day. I love it. I know you will too. Again, 888-597-0233.
So we want a piece of ice for world protection, and they won't give it. We've never asked for anything else, and we could have kept that piece of land, and we didn't. So they have a choice. You can say yes, and we will be very appreciative, or you can say no, and we will remember.
There are a number of reasons for why Greenland is suddenly the most fought over piece of ice on the planet. First and foremost, the military board has changed. That's what you have to get. The military board has changed. So as the Arctic ice retreats, Greenland sits at the center of a new sea lanes that bypass traditional choke points and shorten routes between Europe, North America, and Asia. Now, the U.S. already operates the Bidufik space base in northwest Greenland, a key hub for missile warning, missile defense, space surveillance for both the U.S. and NATO. Greenland also anchors what's called the GI-UK gap. That's the Greenland-Iceland-UK corridor, where NATO tracks Russian submarines trying to slip into the North Atlantic. In any real conflict with Russia, those radars and those routes are life or death. So that's the first thing. The military board has changed. Second, the mineral board has changed. So you've got military and minerals, right? Greenland holds some of the world's most significant undeveloped deposits of rare earth elements. The metals that power things like, advanced weapon systems, smartphones, electric vehicles, batteries, and critically, AI data centers. One major deposit, the Kavin field, is estimated to be among the largest known land deposits of rare earths, while broader estimates suggest Greenland just as a whole could hold close to 20% of global rare earth reserves. Right now, as we speak, China dominates. It's not even close. China dominates the rare earth supply chain, roughly 60 to 70% of mining and up to 90% of processing capacity. That means when the world builds chips, missiles, drones, EVs, AI infrastructure, Beijing doesn't sit at the choke point. Beijing is the choke point. So in a world where supply chains are weaponized, geography becomes currency. Control the inputs, you control the outcomes. So military and minerals, those are the twin dynamics that are driving the United States to take over Greenland. Not to mention Europe's slow but very real and very noticeable demographic decline as a world power. Again, this is something that's very prominent in the National Security Strategy Initiative that the White House just published back in December. It's a brilliant document. But the security strategy is openly warning that Europe is basically dying. It's in terminal decline if it does not secure its borders and revitalize its identity as a vibrant Christian civilization. If they don't, Europe is going to cease to exist as we've known it for the last 1,000 years. And so Europe cannot be depended on to guard this area of the world anymore, especially if Denmark continues to go Islamic. And again, Trump is openly talking like this guy. And again, I think European leaders, these globalist leaders, these bullies in Brussels, they are learning the hard way. I'm sorry, you can't become a complacent vassal continent with placid welfare populations and still be considered a world power in a world order that's increasingly being dominated and reorganized around great power politics. And Trump is simply calling that bluff when it comes to Greenland. I know it hurts, but it's the reality. And the fact that European leaders sent a total of 34 freaking troops as a statement of their commitment to defend Greenland only makes such global impotence all the more obvious and all the more laughable. So here's where we really are as we speak. Europe tried to draw a moral red line. Greenland's not for sale. America can't bully its allies. NATO unity is sacred. Trump answered with math. Okay, no problem. Here's your tariff schedule. Here's your dependence on our market, right? Here's a clock. And when that clock started, Europe's bluster ran straight into its own weaknesses. Fragmented governments, aging populations, shaky energy supplies, and militaries that haven't mobilized at scale in decades. Italy saw it. Investors saw it. You could be sure somewhere in Beijing, they definitely saw it. And Trump has them right where he wants them. This isn't just a fight over a frozen island. It's a live fire test over who actually holds leverage in the 21st century. Dying globalist bureaucrats in Brussels who write statements, or the rising blocks of great power politics. I think we all know the answer. And I think we all know, including the Europeans, how this ends.